All right. Yeah, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yay.
Good to see you, Rima.
You too.
Hi, James. My office mate's going to be leaving here, so there won't be like a lurker in the background the whole time.
Oh, no worries. This is Bessie. She wants to say hi.
Hi.
Hi, Bessie.
I'll be in the conference room too with Rima.
Bessie, did you used to work at CAP?
I didn't work at CAP, but I was part of their Leadership Institute.
Oh, okay. Because I now that I see you, I associate you with there. Maybe we ran into each other there or something.
Oh yeah, maybe.
How's it going, James?
Hey, Dan. Doing well.
Good. You sound great. Your audio is good.
Great.
Okay, sounds good.
How's my audio?
You're good.
Do I look really red? Like on my monitor? I don't know why.
No, you look fine.
Okay. Because it's weird to be like beet red on your own webinar.
I have the other problem. Like I look really like kind of like dark. Like like I never seem to get enough like sunlight into my room. So then it's like I don't know, I'm like shining a light right on my face so people can see me.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of shadow. You got like a kind of like a Batman thing going on. It's like the
I can't. There's nothing. Yeah, I can't like not do it. Do this or like this.
Yeah, that's definitely too dark. There we go. Hi, Elena.
Hey. How are you guys? My screen's kind of dirty, I think. I'll try to clean it off.
A little smudgy, I guess. That looks better. Yeah. I'm going to try and change your name so it doesn't say Terry.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. All right, rename. Okay, all right. Better now. Okay, I'm going to go grab a glass of water. I'll be right back. Everybody's slides look really good.
Good.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm going to practice screen sharing here in just a second and just let me know what you can see, because it depends on how the different views can like accidentally blot out the speakers. So I'm going to do that. All right. Elena, where are you located?
I am in the DC office. We are on Massachusetts, I think, right off of Massachusetts.
Okay.
What about you?
DC too. We're on M Street between 19th and 20th, right across from District Taco.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. I don't know why District Taco reminded me of this, but from here on out, our mic is live, so the few people who are trickling in early can see us and hear us. So keep it clean.
Good to know. Thank you.
All right, so now I'm going to try to do the screen sharing. Okay, now what can everyone see?
I can see the intro slide.
Can
Yep.
you see me as well, and can you see everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That is exactly as I was hoping. Just to make sure.
Dan, did you share the webinar info with Melody? I know I got the her email info to you a little bit late on Friday.
Yes, I missed out on that, but I shared it with her just like within the last half hour. So it should be at the top of her email.
I'll ping her to let her know.
Yeah, and Raul from the Census Bureau, I believe, is going to be coming in by phone. Let's see here. I don't see him just yet. I'll check my email. See where he is. All right. Okay, I'm gonna bear with me for just a second. I'm gonna see. All right. All right, so Raul isn't on yet. He should be. Hi, who's
Hi,
this?
Raul is here.
Raul?
Yes.
Hey, it's Dan. How you doing?
Hi, good. Thank you.
Good. You're going to be going right after me today.
Okay, great. And then just to reiterate, as we agreed, just like I did last week, just to talk about the timeline, how organizations can help, and then you, since I'm not on Zoom, you'll relay any questions that you get, and then I'll be done in roughly 10 minutes, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And Raul, sorry for everyone else. This is Raul Cisneros. He's Director of Partnerships for the Census Bureau. I don't know if y'all know him. So far we have James Hong, Rima Roy, and Elena Langworthy from State Voices and AAJC, respectively.
Great. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah, so it's me, then it's Raul, then it's Rima, and then let's see, oh wait, hold on a second. For the State Voices, what sequence are y'all gonna go in?
It'll be me, Elena, and then James, and then Melody.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what's Melody's title? Or what's everybody's title? Actually, it's.
So I'm the census manager with State Voices National. I'll let James.
Hey, I'm the Deputy Director of State Capacity Building.
And Melody is the program manager of the Silver State Voices Nevada table.
Program manager. Silver State Voices. What is it?
Silver State Voices. Mm-hmm.
Silver State Voices.
Yeah, she said she logged in, but I'm not seeing her.
Okay.
So I just sent her another message to make sure.
Yeah, I'm not seeing her on the attendee or the panelist view.
Okay.
And Rima, what's your title?
Program Associate for Census and Civic Engagement.
Program Census and Civic. Okay. Oh, hi, Melody. I see Melody now. Oh, her camera has been disabled. That's common. Let's see here. All right.
There's two James.
Oops.
So James, we got your face on one view and your monitor on the other. Hi, Melody. All right, I can see Melody. I don't know if Melody can hear.
Oh, sorry.
All right, I'm going to get rid of your other one.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to leave. All right, so the camera's disabled. I'm going to leave it on the off chance that if I kick that one off, I would accidentally kick you off too, because that is permanent and cannot be undone. So. Hi, Melody. I'm Dan from Faith and Public Life. Can you wave if you can hear us?
Hi, Dan.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, this. Let me fix the glare. Oh, that's too dark.
And Rima, do y'all go by AAJC or Asian Americans Advancing Justice?
You can just say Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AJC.
Okay.
Or Advancing Justice, AJC, if that's easier.
Okay, Advancing Justice, AAJC. Yeah, ever since NPR changed their name away from National Public Radio to NPR, I always ask because, you know, you never know.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, we have a really confusing name because we used to be the Asian American Justice Center, which is where the AAJC comes from, but then we came together in a coalition called Asian Americans Advancing Justice. So AAJC stands for Asian American Justice. It's just a long name. But the short form is Advancing Justice AAJC. Yeah.
Advancing Justice AAJC. Okay, that's what I'll go with then. So we're 2 minutes out from official start time. Usually I like to say hello right at that time, and then kind of slow play the introduction while the last few people come in, and everybody can hear me saying this right now. And then I'll just welcome and give a brief, this is how you ask a question. Make sure everybody knows it's being recorded, and we'll send them the slide decks. I'll go through my little spiel for Faith and Public Life, and then I'll kick it to Raul, and then pause for question and answer, and then go through the rest of the run of show from there. Raul, are you going to be able to hang out the whole time, or do you have to hop off after your segment?
I have to hop off if that's okay.
Oh yeah, we're grateful for the time that you can give us.
And then Dan, I'll follow up with how many folks were on the call just so I could report up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Melody, I want to make sure I pronounce your name correctly. Is it Melody Hudia?
Hudilia.
Hudilia. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The L's are like the NEA in Spanish.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have a hard to pronounce name, so I always try to do unto others so that let them do unto me.
How do you pronounce your name?
Neifelt. N-E-J. Yeah, the J is silent.
Okay.
Mhm. All right, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, and welcome to today's webinar on the census with Faith in Public Life, State Voices, and Advancing Justice, AAJC, and the U.S. Census Bureau. I'm Dan Neifelt, Trainings Director at Faith in Public Life. We're going to give folks another minute or two to log on, then we'll explain run of show and dive right in. We're very grateful for everyone's time and commitment to helping to get out the count. So we'll start in just a minute, and first thing I want to say is that this is being recorded, and there's going to be a follow-up email after we're done. It's probably going to come out tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, that has a recording and also has the slide decks that we're going to be using today, and it'll have links for ways that you can take action in your own community. So we're going to start in just one more minute. Once again, my name is Dan Neifelt. I'm Trainings Director at Faith in Public Life. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today about how to get out the count for the 2020 census, which is just over 1 year away. Before we dive in, I wanted to go through just a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, if you would like to ask a question, I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A box throughout. And after each section, we'll have a couple of minutes for question and answer for the speaker who has just finished. And then we'll have a few more minutes for Q&A at the end. Please use the Q&A box. Please do not use the chat box. The one that says chat, that's for reporting problems like I can't hear you, or the screen went black, or there's a terrible echo in your voice. So please ask your questions in the Q&A box. Second, as I mentioned, this is being recorded, and we'll send you the recording and the slide decks and links to resources that will help you take action. So before I dive in, I just wanted to introduce the rest of our speakers, and we'll introduce them again before each one speaks. Dan Neifelt, Trainings Director, Faith in Public Life. After that, we're going to have Raul Cisneros from the U.S. Census Bureau, and after that we'll have Raima Roy from Advancing Justice, AAJC. And after that we will have James Hong, Annalena Langworthy, and Melody Hudilia from State Voices. So with that, I'm going to start sharing a slide deck. You should be able to see all of our speakers as well as some slides. And I'll tell you a little bit about Faith in Public Life, because I know a lot of folks in here are very familiar with State Voices and AAJC, maybe not as much with Faith in Public Life. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Faith in Public Life is a national network of 50,000 people, clergy and lay leaders, public advocates alike, united in the prophetic pursuit of justice and the common good. We work on issues ranging from the census to immigration reform to healthcare, civic engagement, and LGBT equality. All these issues that have a common thread of justice and the common good. We do organizing of faith leaders and congregations. We do trainings on media and messaging and advocacy. And we also do media outreach and communications strategy. We have offices in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, throughout the state of Ohio and North Carolina and Florida. And for our census work, you can sign up to join us and get updates and opportunities for action at faithinpubliclife.org/census. The URL's there in that really awkward aqua color at the bottom of the slide. So I wanted to say just a little bit about what we're calling Faith Census Sabbath Weekend. the weekend of March 29th through April 1st, we're calling Census Sabbath weekend. That's 1 year out from the 2020 census. And we're going to be mobilizing people as much as possible to do what we can to block the citizenship question from being attached to the 2020 census. And some of our panelists today are going to be talking about what is so dangerous about the citizenship question and why it's so important that we do everything we can to make sure that it is not included in the 2020 census. And if you go to www.faithandpubliclife.org/census and sign up, we will reach out to you with the events that are nearest to your community, or if you're interested in being the lead organizer of one, we can provide resources that will help you do that. We want to do information sessions, press conferences, public events to start building awareness far in advance. Because we know with the census there's a lot at stake. $800 billion in resources on everything from healthcare to education to emergency services. And our speakers today are going to talk in a lot more detail about the fine grain of what's at stake here. So I want to leave that to them. I'll just give you the preview that there's a lot of resources and representation at stake. And from our perspective at Faith and Public Life, this is very much a values issue. You know, there's about dollars and cents. It's also about our ideals. We know that the U.S. Census is mandated in the Constitution. We'll learn a little bit more about that. But at the beginning, there were people who were categorized as white, who every man, woman, and child were counted as a full person. Enslaved people of African descent were counted as 3/5 of a person, and Native Americans were not counted at all. And we've seen the law and the census been a tool of both inclusion at some times and exclusion at others, based on ethnicity and immigration status. And we're motivated right now to make sure that this year's census is a pathway to equality and equity rather than a tool of exclusion, because that's really what's at stake here from a values perspective. Now, AAJC and State Voices have some really in-depth, community-specific messaging guidance to provide today, and I want to step back and let them cover that. It's research-backed, it's really good stuff. But I wanted to say just one quick thing about our approach to messaging in general, which is if you're speaking at a community event, whether it's at a school or a union or in a religious congregation, if you read bullet points off of a page, it sounds like you're reading bullet points off of a page. And we want to sequence our remarks and say things in our own voice while hitting the key information that the research says we should. And at FPL, we use a framework called Values, Problem, Solution, Action, where at the beginning of our remarks, we lead with our values. Before we talk about the problems or the challenges ahead, we talk about our why we care, why we're involved. After we talk about our values, then we lay out what the problem or the challenge is. After we lay out the problem and the challenge, then we talk about the solution. Now, the solution isn't what we need to do today. The solution is the vision of a better world that we are trying to bring about. And lastly, after we talk about values and then problem and solution, we want to make sure to give people a call to action, a concrete step that people can take today to help bring our solution into reality. So I just wanted to lay that out there as sort of an appetizer to the main course of the messaging that our additional panelists are going to be laying out today. So values, problem, solution, and action. So when you're thinking about how to communicate about the census, we're going to give a lot of relevant information, but I just wanted to share that as sort of an organizing principle if you were going to say give a speech at a public event or give a presentation at a community event. And there's plenty of things we can do. We're given these trainings over a year ahead of the census for good reason. There's a lot of groundwork to lay and a lot of different steps we need to be taking. Some of which here are on the slide. I don't want to just read out loud what's on the screen. I'll leave it here for a second. These are just a few examples of things that we can do between now and 2020. And the common thread here is start now. It is a Herculean task to count 330 odd million people in the space of 1 year. The only way we can make sure to get people who would otherwise be left out is to start laying the groundwork today. And that's why you're here and why we're so grateful for your time. With that, I want to turn it over to Raul Cisneros from the Census Bureau. He's the Director of National Partnerships. We're always grateful for your time and expertise and leadership, Raul. I'm going to put on your slide with the timeline on it and turn the floor over to you. Thank you so much, Raul.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks to Faith in Public Life, and delighted to be here with State Voices in Advancing Justice, AAJC. I'm delighted to share some points about the upcoming the 2020 census, and happy to answer any questions. And then, of course, I'll be a contact going forward. But we're about 13 months away now from the census. In the process of recruiting, we will recruit 2.5 million people and hire between 300,000 to 500,000 people to conduct the census. We're already hiring a partnership specialist, going to hire more than 1,500 partnership specialists at the local level. And these will be the folks on the ground that will be working in the communities that they know and about the importance of the census, particularly as we get closer to the census next year. But from a national partnership perspective, the work that we're doing out of Washington is to begin those conversations now with national organizations so they can have enough lead time. Messaging is being finalized right now that all partners will be able to use so that they will be conveying the appropriate message at census time next year. So we're getting ready. From a timeline perspective, in 2019, we're going to begin opening census offices. We'll have about close to 250 across the country. And then we'll start an operation this year called address canvassing. And address canvassing is we verify the addresses of all the dwellings in the United States. This is important because then in about mid-March of next year, for about a week, we're going to send out invitations to about 140 million households across the country, inviting them to respond to the census. The 2020 census will be the first online census in history. So we invite households to do that. If a household would like to call and provide that information on the phone, they can do that. And a household can still also reply by paper. From an advertising communication perspective, we're going to advertise in about, by the way, excuse me, let me back up. You'll be able to respond to the census in 13 languages, English plus 12 non-English languages. Advertising campaign will also be in those languages. And then, of course, our partnership program is very important, and partners can be local partners, a church, a chamber of commerce, a local advocacy group, all the way to Fortune 100 company. And together, these partners, again, help to tell the importance of the census required by the Constitution. More than $675 billion gets distributed every year, and will help tell those that they serve, their audiences, their publics, customers, employees, et cetera, that the census is confidential. And I cannot emphasize, how important that is for us. The Title 13 of the U.S. Code is very strict. The census workers take a lifetime oath to protect the confidentiality of respondents, and we can't share anybody's response with any other individual, government agency, state or local government, law enforcement entity. It just is not shared. The law is very strict. The penalties are very severe, and this is a lifetime oath that employees take even if they leave the Census Bureau. Partners can convey that message, and then can convey the importance of why the census is important. We talked about the billions of dollars, but census data is used to making the best possible decisions in the private sector, the public sector. We all individuals can use this vital public good that we will return when we start reporting the census figures at the end of 2020. We all contribute to the census through our taxes, and we want to return back a product that is make sure that everyone is counted in the United States. Everyone must be counted in the census, so that's what we're getting ready to do. We're beginning these partnership discussions. We have, like I said, I have a local partnership program. If anybody would like to connect with a particular region of the country and begin partnership efforts, that would be fantastic. At the state and local level, we're having complete count committees that are established. These are entities established by a state or local entity to promote the census. We provide technical advice. So there's lots of ways to get involved. We're going to have messaging that partners can use, whether it's a newsletter article, a tweet, a social media posting, with those salient points that partners can be making to encourage the public to participate. And like I said, everyone must be counted, and that is what we're going to be focusing on preparing this year, and then particularly next year as we begin the advertising campaign. And just to reiterate, we'll have it advertising in early 2020, and then about mid-March is when the public will start getting their letters asking them to go online and to respond. And then we'll follow up with the households that do not respond. But it's really important for every household to count everybody living there. If they do that, they will complete the census, and there won't be any follow-up. So from our standpoint, that's what we ask the public to do, to take those few minutes and respond to the 2020 census. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And if I don't have the answer, happy to follow up afterwards with any organization that'd be interested in, whether at the national level or local organization. Happy to connect you with one of our 6 regions, where again we're going to have this very significant partnership effort at the local level.
Great, thank you, Raul. There's actually one question that came through right away that I wanted to share with you. This is from Levon Turner, and it says, how large do community partners have to be, and do they have to be nonprofit organizations?
Well, I can tell you that a partner can be a for-profit entity. We are talking to major corporations and asking them to join us to help to promote the census with their customers, if they have a large customer base or audience base or employee base. So a partner can be a nonprofit. It does not matter. We're all invested in the census. It's a civic exercise, so we are happy to partner with any organization that wants to come forward and help us out in one or multiple ways. There's nothing prescriptive that a partner may do. There's no cost in being a partner. But again, this is, like I said, a civic exercise. We want to make sure everybody's counted, and we can all contribute in one way or another, whether we're telling our friends and family to respond, or whether a large retailer is telling their customers, hey, make sure that come census time that you take those few minutes and respond.
Great, thank you. There's one more question that came through in the chat, and I want to ask everyone, if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A. It's much easier for the administrators to see. This one is from Kian Din, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. The question is, what is the final day to be counted in 2020?
So what happens is that we will, the online response instrument, right, that the survey form, online form, will be available in about mid-March. And essentially the public has until roughly the end of April to respond. And there will be reminders, because if a household responds online, we'll know that household did, and we won't send a reminder. We're going to send reminder notifications to households that do not reply, and we're giving them about the end of April. And then after that, then we'll follow up. We'll have a census worker go to that household and attempt to count the household. So roughly a month or so, 5 weeks or so. So, but the public will have enough time, and there'll be plenty of reminders, advertising, and then that's where our partners can come in and say, hey, make sure you take those few minutes and reply.
Okay, so through April they can reply, and then in May workers go out to find the folks who have not yet responded. Correct. That will start then, and then we'll go into June, and then we want to be done about the middle of the year, because then we need to process all the information, because by law we have to report the nation's population and the apportionment of the House seats, and it's required by the Constitution by the end of 2020. Okay, thank you. Well, we've got plenty more questions, and we got plenty more constituents. So I want to ask one more question, and then we'll move on, and we will have time to get to all these other questions. I just want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. As groups this one is from Valeria Cerda, sorry. As groups are outreaching to community members and their constituents, do you recommend they help people fill out census on tablets at their doors, or have them fill it out at local computer labs? Are there any rules or laws?
There's no requirement, and it's a good question, because you can fill out the census, of course, on a home computer, on a tablet, on a laptop, even on a smartphone. So we're making it very easy, and the public can do it from wherever they would like, wherever it's convenient. But the key thing is to make sure they include everybody living in that household in the census form.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. There are more, but I do want to keep moving for now. We had one about how sororities can become involved, and another about federal funding. I do want to come back to those, but I would like to give Rima Roy from AAJC, or Asian American Justice, Advancing Justice, AAJC, now to go through their slides about the 2020 census. So thank you so much, Raul. As always, we're always grateful for your expertise in time and leadership.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks to Faith and Public Life for helping host this webinar. I'm going to do a quick overview of why the census is important to the AANHPI faith community and the community overall. Really quick, here is a list of our past webinars from last year. So if you missed any, you can check out the recordings through these YouTube links. Our next webinar will be on March 20th, and we'll cover digital tools for GOTC. So a quick overview of the census. The census is constitutionally mandated by Article 1, Section 2, meaning it is required by law. It is critical for civil rights enforcement, such as voting rights. Unfortunately, there has been a historical differential undercount, where certain communities, including the AANHPI community and other immigrant and communities of color, have been missed more often than non-Hispanic white communities, which means they lose out on their fair share of their allocation of money and power. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the census dictates the allocation of power and, as Dan said, $800 billion to states and localities annually. So census data is critical for reapportioning 435 seats in the House of Representatives to states according to their population sizes. Census data is utilized to redraw lines after reapportionment to ensure compliance with the Voting Rights Act as well. So the Census Bureau is important for the AANHPI community for several reasons. In the 2010 census, the Census Bureau estimated that 16 million AANHPIs were not counted. Our communities have been undercounted for decades, putting our families, neighborhoods, and communities at a disadvantage. Today, roughly 1 in 5 Asian Americans and 1/3 of NHPIs live in hard-to-count census tracts. Communities that are especially in risk of being undercounted include those that have limited English-speaking skills and or are low income, including several communities in the AANHPI community.
Great. Hey, Rima, my slides are accidentally bleeding off the monitor. I'm just going to close the slideshow and then reopen it real quick.
Okay, no worries.
So that everybody can see your slides.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that I'm not shortchanging them or cropping them out. Okay. All right. Thank you for your patience, everybody. Oops. All right. Okay, there we go. So sorry to interrupt. Go right ahead.
Okay. So when AANHPI communities are undercounted, they may be given less than their fair share of government resources, including for education and healthcare. Many programs that impact AANHPI communities are based in whole or in part on census data. With lack of data on AANHPIs, there is less funding for programs such as Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, such as SNAP, Medicaid, and more. AAJC conducted its own census messaging research to gauge awareness and motivation to participate in the upcoming census. According to the 1,600 AANHPIs who participated in our online survey, a majority, which is about 55%, of AANHPIs said they have not heard anything about the upcoming 2020 census. I think we're one slide, a couple slides back.
Okay, my bad. Okay, correct
Yes.
slide now?
Yeah, the next one.
Yes.
So when asked what messages were most likely to encourage participation, these were the messages that resonated the most strongly within our community. Family. Census data is critical to our family's future and the next generation. It helps us get the healthcare, transportation, schools, affordable housing, and higher education that our families need to get a good start and be successful. And then the second one is resources. Census data is used to determine not only federal government funding for programs and services, but businesses also use it to decide where to invest and create jobs. Filling out the census makes sure that you, your family, and your community get a fair shot at those resources. So in order to increase awareness and continue community engagement within the AANHPI community, AAJC has been working on a number of materials. We're currently producing fact sheets, including 23 issue fact sheets on various topics, such as census FAQs and how to get language assistance. We're also producing 50 state fact sheets, including a DC fact sheet and a national fact sheet, and a simplified version of this fact sheet will be available as well. We also have a community engagement and communications toolkit that will cover several topics, such as how to write an op-ed or PSA. This webinar is part of a webinar series that we've been conducting on various census topics that have a recap blog to supplement them. And finally, we're also producing a census website where AAJC census resources and partner resources will also be available, along with the latest census updates and news, our webinar series and blogs, and social media updates. Now I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, if there's any questions for Rima about particularly how this this impacts AANHPI communities, I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A box as we go. And thanks everyone for your helpful additions to the chat bar as well. I just want to rewind one little bit and go back to this message. You know, these messages that really popped in the research, talking about families' futures. And we're talking about, you know, getting a fair shot at the resources that impact our families and communities. You're really talking about values as much as you're talking about dollars and cents there. So I just wanted to highlight that through line, that we're talking really about people and we're really talking about principles. So always good to see that when that comes up validated in the research.
And then this is just, on the previous slide, there's just a tentative list of all our future webinars. This is subject to change, but next month we will be having digital tools for GOTC on March 20th.
Great, and the level of research and constituent education that you've done already is really remarkable, and we're grateful for these resources.
Thank you.
As well as the upcoming stuff in the months to come. With that, I want to turn it over to our colleagues at State Voices. We have Elena Langworthy, who is the Census Manager. We have James Holland, who is the Deputy Director of State Capacity Building, and we have Melody Hudelia, who's the Program Manager in Nevada at Silver State Voices. So I want to turn it over to you all now. We're Faith and Public Life. We're really grateful for your partnership with State Voices. And let me know if you can advance the slides. If not, just say next slide when you want me to shift it. You can try an arrow key or click in your mouse. All right, I'll do it then. All right.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I was on mute. Not helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Dan, for the intro and allowing us to be part of the webinar today. It's great and great to see a lot of folks starting to get engaged. I thought we could go through just a little bit of state voices. You'll see the map of our network here up on the screen. We have a network of 23 state tables that lead year-round civic engagement programs, meaning like voter engagement, get out the vote, issue organizing, and leadership development. And our network is really focused on building power within communities of color, immigrants, low-income folks, and other groups. And so these are going to be the communities where the state get out the count efforts will be focused. And also a lot of those areas are the hard to count populations. Another interesting thing to note before we move on to the next slide is that our network also provides year-round access for data tools to over 800 community-based organizations through our Tools for All program. Let's see if I can move this. I can't move it, so can you go to the next slide? Thank you. State Voices is one of the national census hubs, and we are focused on state and local get out the count work. During the GOTC work, organizations will create plans that target all hard to count communities across their state. This is a really large undertaking, and 15 of our tables have taken on a lead role in their state to work on this. They will be providing things like advocacy, field, and data expertise. And we really just want to make sure that the work can be as coordinated as possible at the state and local level. And while most of our states are still in the process of finalizing their plans, many will involve AAPI communities and faith organizations, because we know that those are two very important groups that often have good trusted messengers. Next slide. Thank you. So you'll see on this slide some of the things that our states are currently working on or thinking about, including working with state legislatures to secure some state funding for census outreach. Specifically, our Massachusetts table is requesting $4 million for community-based outreach and has done some great legislative education to the governor's office and is working to get a budget line item through the 2019 cycle. Nearly all of our state tables have also spent time advocating against the citizenship question when it was introduced last year, and will continue to do so now, even as it is going through the lawsuits and in Congress. Additionally, many of our states are also creating strategies to combine the get out the count work with existing field plans. And an example of this, in Wisconsin, the table will be running an integrated Get Out the Vote program, which means that the table will talk to all eligible individuals about the importance of voting and also educate them on the upcoming census. They'll also have a digital pledge card component with this. And then finally, because our state tables and their partners have been involved in the community for so many years, they've been really able to identify trusted messengers that they'll continue to do this year. And because the trusted voices are often from hard to count areas, they're a really good validator for why the census is important. And just as a last closing piece before I turn it over to James, State Voices has created a list of census milestones that is helping to guide our get out the count work in states. And I'm happy to email those out after this presentation. And now I'll turn it over to James.
Great, thanks, Elena. So hi, everyone. My name is James Hong, and I'm a Deputy Director in the State Capacity Building Department at State Voices. And besides my experience in civic engagement in a past life, I have been an active member of multiracial Korean American and Asian American faith communities and worked with faith leaders in the civic engagement space. Really honored to be talking with you all about engaging Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander faith communities. Congregations are membership-driven organizations. They're already highly organized, and they engage people in our communities that, frankly, aren't actively, like civically active in other ways. And within some ethnic groups, huge proportions of the population are in congregations or connected to congregations. So, right now we are a little bit more than a year out from the census. So it is a very good time, a great time to be building bridges with faith leaders and their congregations. I want to start out by just pointing out some things that are obvious. Just like in other organizing, and as Elena mentioned earlier, as we do outreach to faith communities, we want to find the trusted messengers. So in congregations, structurally and culturally, there's often a strong sense of hierarchy under one leader or a group of leaders. And so, they're kind of natural, or they're the main organizers in that group. Another thing is that, I didn't write this on the slide, but something that occurred to me as important as we engage these communities or these groups is that is to have a posture of listening. And this goes for all organizing, but congregation leaders are used to being in charge, and they're used to being listened to simply by the nature of their position. Back in 2013, I accompanied a local Korean American activist to a church to do voter registration. And this was someone who has likely registered more Korean Americans than any other single person in all of New York. Like, he has been at it for like 30 plus years. And, we spent more than half of our time in that church sitting in the pew, listening to the sermon and participating in the worship service. And the actual tabling was like a fraction of the time. And we were debriefing after that. And he said to me, you really have to listen to them if you want to be listened to. And so, that stuck with me. If we want to make inroads into congregations, we have to put some time into and also show respect for the organization and the organizing that's already happening there. The next bullet about shaping the message, I'm going to talk about that more on the next slide. But then bullet after that, we should start making plans for significantly different levels of interest in faith communities. So they are in no way a monolithic whole, and based on denomination or faith tradition and ethnicity, you're gonna just have a huge variety of responses and of interest so when you go out to them and talk about census. So for example, I know of Muslim nonprofits who have partnered very successfully with mosques around civic engagement. They did a big voter registration campaign in several states. But interest certainly is not universal among Asian American faith communities. The last point I want to make on this slide is about the sort of subcultures. So whether the audience is new immigrants or American born. And this impacts definitely who your messenger is, as well as translation needs, but also, just some of the things that you'll say. So it's good to sort of take a moment and see see how it's going to land. So for example, new immigrants do not identify as Asian or Asian Americans, largely. To them, they self-identify as, Chinese, Bangladeshi, etc., their home country. The category of Asian will go a lot further with American-born audiences. So on the next slide, when we engage with faith communities, what do we say? How are we framing the issue and to get buy-in on the census? AAJ has done, message testing which they just shared. So, I think that's fantastic. This is the result of my reflections, and so I'm just sharing them here with you. One message that I think works is being, pretty ethnocentric and congregation-centric. So, as I said, like the newer immigrants are going to identify with that home country. So to approach them and to say something like, census is a way to increase the visibility for your community and to gain recognition and to be, sort of seen on the map, having that message. And related to this, I would find actually an opportunity to recognize the role of the faith leader. So, if it were me, I would go out to a church and I would, at some point, I would say to the faith leader, I would say, you and your congregation play such an important role in the faith, you and your congregation play such an important role in the Korean community. Your congregation is a trusted institution, more than any other, to many other people. And that's why you can do more for the census than we can, and then more than even the Census Bureau. Like messages like that, which, kind of appeal to their sense, their sort of, their role in the community. Another possible message around is around like sort of helping others. This is a universal value among people of faith, and it can take concrete shape in the form of filling out the census. So the language barrier is a huge obstacle. Asian Americans have the highest rates of limited English proficiency. And so you might point to the congregation's potential to help with language access. The final point would be children and education. So we know how eager folks are for advancement through education and through their children's education. The most undercounted age group in the US are children. So 1 million children were not counted in 2010. This impacts a ton of government spending. And by the way, Asian Americans are, they're kind of more okay with big government generally. Among the 12 biggest federal programs that use census data include some critical services serving children and their educations, which I've listed there on the slide. So, so those are some of my thoughts regarding engaging the AANHPI faith communities. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over now to Melody with Silver State Voices.
Cool. Thank you very much, James. Like you mentioned, my name is Melody. I serve as the program manager for Silver State Voices, which is a State Voices table here in Nevada. But before we get into that, I want to give a little bit of context for Nevada's demographics, right? So Nevada is actually one of the fastest growing states in the country in terms of population percentage points, right? And in particular, the AAPI population is the fastest growing racial or ethnic group within all of Nevada. So for example, between the census in 2000 and the census in 2010, the AAPI population actually increased by 193%, which is an astonishing amount. So the AAPI population, as well as the overall Nevada state population, is only projected to grow even more. And so we know that the 2020 census is really important for capturing and identifying like who lives in our communities, and then how we can best support them once we identify like who lives here. So we have started census planning. We did a little bit of census a few years ago, but we started last year talking to our table partners, which includes faith-oriented and AAPI focused organizations about what work in Nevada at the local and state level will look like for the census. So we have started a census coalition group, and like Elena mentioned, we really envision our coalition group with our table partners to be the hub of activity, of resources for anything census related. And so one of our big buckets when we talk about like our census work group and our census plan for 2019 and beyond is how to take our previous civic engagement work that we've done for years and that our partners are familiar with and translate that into census efforts. So if you go to the next slide, please, we can talk a little bit more about that. And so like I was just mentioning, our partners have done civic engagement work. So that includes voter registration drives. That means door knocking to identify issues that our voters care about. That means phone banking. That means going out to the polls, like things like that. And so we have a few faith-oriented partners, one here in Southern Nevada and one up in Northern Nevada and Washoe County. And they do spend a lot of time talking to their congregations, their churches, their memberships about what is it like to be connected in the world of civic engagement. Another partner I want to highlight is Asian Community Development Council, or as we call them, ACDC, and they are focused solely on the AAPI group here in Southern Nevada, and they do lots of phenomenal work with electoral work, with immigration services, with health services, lots of different kinds of civic engagement. So when I just mentioned in the last slide, these three partners have done grassroots organizing and civic engagement work. So for example, ACDC, our AAPI focus group, did a little bit of in-language material translation and resources for Get Out the Count and electoral work. And so when we think about census, how can we take the language component of that and turn it into census groups, right? So for example, ACDC did some translation of, I don't know, of like, what do you call it? A voter guide, right? And so they translate into different languages. But for the census, what languages do they translate into? Like, who can they point out to, and how can we figure out which steps we need to take to make sure access for language translation is available to all? I know it was mentioned earlier in the webinar that the Census Bureau will have the printed materials in different languages, and they'll have telephone assistance, so that's not every language, right? And if a non-English speaker doesn't see access to that, then there's a less likely chance that they'll go ahead and fill it out and then tell their neighbors, and they won't fill it out as well. And so it's a really big bucket of what we're thinking about when planning our census efforts here in Nevada. Our next bucket, really quickly, is James mentioned it earlier, about building relationships with congregations and with churches and with different AAPI groups for the census, right? For not just the census, but also beyond the future civic engagement work. So the census is technically, I guess, next year, but the work started yesterday, really. And we need to spend time and build trust to make sure they understand what it means to be a trusted messenger in census efforts. Thirdly, I want to touch a little bit about state funding for the census. So here in Nevada, we have a bill in our session right now to allocate funding for census outreach efforts. We don't have the final number yet, but we know this is super crucial because we need to be able to reach not just voters this time like we do in GeoTV work, but we need to be able to reach everybody. And reaching everybody needs more resources, more time, and more people in terms of capacity. And so we are doing lots of different things, but these three buckets, translating GeoTV to GeoTC, a second bucket of creating relationships, and our third bucket of advocating for state funding is what the three things we're doing in Nevada right now as we prepare for 2019 and beyond. And that's it for me. So thank you, Dan. Thank you, James. Thank you, Elena.
Dan, I think you're on mute still.
Thank you, Elena. Melody, there's one question that came through that I wanted to put to you right away, which is asking what Pacific Islander groups or individuals you're working with in Nevada, and they'd love to link up as you're considering a PI convening in Vegas. I'll facilitate an email introduction for the person who's asking that question, so you can connect offline about that. So there's two other questions, and I'm not sure exactly who the right person to answer each one is, but I wanted to share them. One is, Rima, I don't know if you could speak to this, is in the messaging research, does Asian include residents from India? And if so, is their messaging different for that?
Yeah, sure. So Asian does include residents from India. The messaging that we displayed for the people in our online survey, it was the same across all ethnicities. So the two messages that resonated the most was an overall capture of all the ethnicities, so the family and the resources.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, we'll keep it open for additional questions coming through. These are all fantastic. I wanted to underscore one point that Melody made when she's talking about, populations that are growing by hundreds of percentage points in between 2010 and 2020. There's representation in Congress. There are seats at stake in several states. And, in order for people to be properly represented, people need to be properly counted. And so there is not only resources in play, there's representation at play, and therefore there is power at play. So there's really a lot at stake. Now, if you're talking to a faith leader, somebody who is a pillar of their community, as James was talking about, in my experience, these are folks who understand the importance of that. That understand the importance of the representation when it comes to redistricting and Congress and all that. What we know from the research is that the folks in the pews, those pastors' audiences, respond more to messaging about the concrete impacts in their own community, the funding of the schools and the emergency services and the roads and things of that nature. But to link those things up together under the umbrella of one values framework is our big challenge. And what we feel the best way to do is to paint the picture of what equity means. Everyone should be able to live in a community where there's enough teachers and there is representation who cares about your community and responsive to your community. So we need to link all those things. Forgive me if I'm rambling a little bit there, but that's the nature of the messaging challenge. And I love also, Melody, what you said about shifting from GOTV to GOTC, from get out the vote to get out the count. I think, viewing civic participation and civic representation as, part of that greater whole is really well said and really important. And I also just wanted to I've been working at Faith and Public Life for 11 years, and as James, you're speaking about dealing with faith leaders, a lot of that really rang true about, harnessing people's authority and prestige and visibility in their community to help folks get counted, particularly people who are new immigrants. So I feel like I've learned a lot from all of you presenters today, and I'm pretty sure that everyone in our audience is as well. We do have a few more minutes left, so if questions come up, we'll be keeping an eye on that. But I also wanted to turn over to Rima and Elena and James and Melody. If you have any closing remarks for the folks on the line, please go ahead. Oh, Lynn Crowley has raised a hand. Lynn, let's see if we can give you a live mic here. Or alternatively, Lynn, you could type in your question. Oh, actually, I wanted to say this one out loud while we try and get Lynn's question. So as we're all doing outreach, what are the most frequently heard concerns that communities are sharing about being counted? I can speak to that from what we've heard on the ground, but I wanted to see if any of our other panelists wanted to take a swing at it first. Well, the biggest thing that Faith and Public Life is working with over 20 organizations, including not only AANHPI, but Latino and African American communities. A thing we're hearing, there's two things. One is deep concern about the citizenship question. A lot of folks who are faith leaders in communities that include new immigrants and undocumented immigrants, there's fear. Where if the citizenship question is on there, people are scared that the information might be shared with ICE. Now that is illegal. It would be illegal for that information sharing to occur, but that's a very real concern. And then particularly among audience research shows that among older people, a sense of a lack of importance. People who have said they're not likely to answer the question generally don't see the importance of it. Now, there's a lot of variability in the data from ethnic group from ethnic group and area to area, but that's what I've seen at least, and also what I've heard.
Yeah, this is Elena. I will just add, I think one of the challenges that our states are grappling with right now, in addition to what you raised, Dan, is the fact that the census falls in between elections and really busy C3 periods for civic engagement work. And so really, as Melody pointed out, making a big transition from get out the vote to get out the count, and really building that capacity has been a big challenge that I think we're still kind of working through, but wanted to name.
Thanks.
Hey, Dan. So I would just add, you know, that, and I think I maybe sort of, you know, alluded to this as I was speaking before, but, you know, organizing and pulling in congregations into any kind of effort, I think, is not that easy. They have a very clear agenda, and it is not really focused on, you know, it is often not focused on sort of public life. So I think pulling them in is a labor, but I think there's a lot to be gained from it. And so, you know, especially because, you know, more than, you know, even more than voting, the census represents an opportunity and a need to really reach everybody. And as I mentioned, you know, I think the faith communities have reached into and with people that, you know, are not voters, they're not civically active in other ways. And so they do represent, you know, a great opportunity for us to, you know, to reach them, to, you know, have a complete count, but also, you know, in the long run, I think, to build power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, not everybody can vote, but everyone can be counted. I think that's a really really important point. One question just came through in chat, and I wonder if any of y'all from State Voices could take a swing at this one. It's from Lynn, Lynn Crowley, who says, "I'm interested in knowing if there is a list of Get Out the Count organizations by state that is already in place for 2020, and if not, if it isn't already, is there an effort made to be creating one of those?"
Yes, there is. Thank you, Lynn. That's a great question. Coordination is super, super key, and having contact information can definitely help on that. So yes, there is a list. I think it is a draft list at this point, as you know, more states are becoming involved and more organizations are kind of finding their way. But that's definitely something that I can share with Dan, and he can share out after this webinar. Thanks.
Oh, great. Thank you, Elena.
Yeah.
Great. Now, there were two questions earlier that came through that I'm not quite sure we have the answers for. From Sheree McLaughlin Goodman asking about sororities getting involved. We'll look into that for you and respond to you directly with any answer that we can find. That's actually the first time I've heard a question of that nature, so thank you for raising it. And then the other one is from James Morris about the lack of federal funding for testing. What are the implications of the lack of online testing, specifically around RI? We can forward that along to Raul or possibly to Terry Ann and see if we can get an answer for you on that. But since you did answer that, I didn't want to just like leave them dangling out there. We'll do our best to find you an answer. All right. See, the question feed has dried up here. So just thanks to everyone who dialed in today or logged on for your time. We're talking about something that seems like pretty far in the future. So thank you for being ahead of the curve to get involved in something very important. And then just on behalf of Faith in Public Life, so grateful to AAJC and State Voices for partnership in general, as well as time and expertise today. We really look forward to continuing to work with you. And for everyone, the recording, slides, and links to all the resources that have been mentioned will be hitting your inbox either tomorrow or Wednesday. And with that, we'll be signing off. And thank you so much. All right, bye.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.